Good evening. Welcome to the first meeting of Silicon Valley SIGGRAPH for the 2024 year. Tonight, we will have a presentation by Pohl talking about immersive media in VR. I am Alex Dunkirk, Chair of Silicon Valley SIGGRAPH chapter. Before we get to tonight's presentation, let me introduce you to our organization. It's not working. Silicon Valley SIGGRAPH typically meets in various Silicon Valley companies about once a month. Our meetings are great for networking and learning the latest technologies. Since COVID hit, we have been online. However, we hope to get back to in-person meetings eventually. Now I'd like to introduce the officers of our chapter. Okay, so I'm Alex Dunkirk. I'm the chair of the chapter. Brent Simon is vice chair. Carl Anderson is the treasurer. And Ken Turkowski is a member at large. And finally, this could be you, because we are always looking for new volunteers. So if you like what you see here, please consider joining us. Officer positions are voluntary. However, there are several benefits. It's a great way to network since you work to put together meetings for speakers. You can also help organize meetings around your interests. Finally, it's always a fun group of people to work with. There are no time requirements, so each volunteer just gives whatever time they can. If what you see here tonight sounds interesting, please contact us. You can find the latest information on our chapter on our website or on our meetup page. Or you can contact us using this email. We also have a YouTube channel where many of our events are recorded. If you're watching this on YouTube, these links will be in the comments. Otherwise, to find this information later, you can just go to Google and type in Silicon Valley SIGGRAPH. Now I'd like to tell you about a meeting coming up in March, in February. In February, Michael Carroll will speak about Intel Embry development. Intel Embry is a part of the Intel One API and provides ray tracing kernels, which have been used in several rendering packages, including Pixar's RenderMan, Chaos's V-Ray, and Kitware's ParaView. Michael's highly technical talk will provide details on how to use Embry. Please join us in February for this interesting and exciting talk. More details will be on Meetup, so check it there for details. I hope you can all join us in February also. So tonight, we will have a presentation by Pohl. Daniel will be talking about immersive media, including stereoscopic 180 degrees and 360-degree images. Daniel will cover the technical issues as well as some of the social aspects. He will talk about some of the latest research in the field, as well as give an overview of what's coming up next. Pohl has been a research scientist at Intel for 14 years, where he pioneered such topics such as real-time ray tracing for games, clouding, virtual reality, and drones. Daniel has been the CEO of the startup immerVR in Germany for the last 2 years, where he has a technical focus on immersive media. Daniel has about 15 peer-reviewed publications and is the inventor of 70 file patents. So please welcome Pohl. And if you want to ask questions, please ask them in the question and session dialog below, or use the raise hand feature. And now I'd like to turn it over to Daniel.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you very much for the great introduction. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Alish. And yeah, I'm happy to talk to you today about the topic of immersive media for VR. And yeah, let's get right started. A quick overview in the beginning so you know what to expect from this talk. First, I'll talk a bit about the immerVR company and our product, the immerGallery. And then we look at photography background and all kind. My cat also wants to say hello, by the way. And all kind of image formats that we're going to cover. We'll look at the current 3D and VR cameras, the topic of a VR slideshow, and also the social topic of fear during browsing random images. And in the end, there's also an outlook on 6 degree of freedom media. So the intro, Alish already covered that. Thank you very much for that. So I'll just go into the last points about immerVR here, which I founded around 2 years ago. It is a fully self-funded company, and since I did that, there's been 2 apps released, the immerGallery app and the demo app. There are 5 patents filed, mostly in the area of immersive media, of course, and 3 trademarks are also registered. So the product named immerGallery is an app for the Meta Quest devices, all that are available, 1, 2, 3, and Pro. It's targeted for consumers, so for $14.99, you can download it yourself. But we also got requests from some companies who want to use it in a business context. So we're also planning a more B2B oriented version for businesses. The app itself has over 250 immersive sample images included. And of course, you can watch your own images, as many as you want all the time. We also have a few premium content images collected up, which you can get with an extra in-app purchase. And these usually have like a rich historic background with voiceovers. For example, we have an East Germany tour in the most important cities where we give historic background on buildings, churches, and all this kind of stuff. And to give you a little bit of an impression how that looks like, I'm going to play back the trailer. If it's not smooth on your end, don't worry. I mean, just consume a few of these images so you get a feeling what the app is about and what details I will talk about later. So I'll start the playback now.
Welcome to immerGallery. immerGallery is an immersive image viewer. It allows you to easily watch pictures, such as VR 180 stereo, 360, 2D and 3D images. Thanks to our automatic image format detection, you can easily navigate through your media. Enjoy our downloadable high-quality galleries, or create your very own with special effects such as snow and rain. Or just enjoy your drone pictures from inside a hot air balloon. You can add music and voiceovers, or listen to your own MP3s while browsing through your images. A zoomable map of your media location is just one of many features to explore. Look what other happy immerGallery users are saying. Wow! Get immerGallery now.
Yeah, so that's it. Now let's dive into the topic with photography. So why do people do photography at all? And I mean, there's numerous reasons, and just to highlight a few of them is, well, you want to relive or feel again whatever you captured yourself. You want to remember these moments again. Often you also want to share these moments with other people's, and photos are just a great medium for that. And because all of our time and money is limited, we cannot visit all places on Earth. So you can explore a lot of regions where you will never be able to physically go. Of course, business-wise, there's also reasons like documentation and planning and everything. So yeah, his photography has been very widely spread. And if we look a bit more in the historical context, this list is basically ordered by consumer availability. It is not necessarily the real technical invention order. But like after paintings, people got access to black and white images. They got analog color images. We got analog stereo images at some point. And then we had this bigger jump to digital images, making it much cheaper to capture anything you want. And of course, digital stereo images followed quickly soon after that. When the VR hype started almost 10 years ago with the first Oculus systems, a lot of 360 monoscopic cameras came out, which you can watch greatly in VR. And also 180-degree cameras stereoscopically came out, and I'll talk more about these later. On the right side, where we have a history of various different cameras, you can see 3D cameras are actually not that new. The one I selected here with 3 lenses actually is from 1947, but 3D photography actually goes back much further. I think 1845 is the first record. And from all these images, definitely the last 3 are best watched in VR. It's just the right medium for it. And I would even claim regular 2D images are very good to watch in VR. So the image formats that we want to cover and that are available to enjoy in VR is first the regular 2D format. So that's basically your smartphone photo or your compact camera photo. Then there is the regular 3D format. I'm naming it like this. It's basically what you know from the kind of 3D TV area or the 3D cinema area. So you have relatively short angled things. They are presented in a rectangular way in front of you. And then you have the spherical media. I mentioned already 360 degrees. It can be either monoscopic, you capture a full sphere all around you, or stereoscopic with 2 different eye points. And then the VR 180 format or 180 degrees 3D is basically capturing 2 half spheres out of your eyes. So you have a great stereo view, and within like your 180 degrees half sphere, you can rotate your head around in VR and it feels very immersive. The other formats that one probably doesn't think about right away when thinking about VR images are actually wide-angled panoramas. And you've probably done all these yourself. You take your smartphone and you move it a little bit, and then you get a very, very, very wide panorama. But so far, they haven't actually been very good display devices for these panoramas. On the phone, you can see you have top and bottom crop. If you have an ultra-wide angle gaming monitor, it's kind of better, but still not ideal. But now in VR, where we have infinite space to look around, these cylindrical panoramas are actually way, way cooler and are really the perfect way to consume this media again. And so 1 year ago in our last January update, we introduced the cylindrical panorama format where it really wraps all around you and gives you a very good immersive view, even though it's only 2D. Now let's talk a little bit about the available cameras. The regular short-angle 3D camera format, like this 3D TV, 3D cinema format I mentioned. There's some old ones still around, like when the 3D TV hype was active over 10 years ago. Fuji released certain 3D cameras, Panasonic has one. And the interesting thing here is there are still Facebook groups which almost daily post pictures taken with these cameras. So there's a surprisingly active community. A little bit newer model, kind of doing the same, but with better video capabilities is from Kandao, the Kucam Ego camera. Now there's also tablets like the LumiPad 2, which has a 3D camera integrated. And of course, with a lot of media attention, the iPhone 15 Pro, after an update, was then able to capture what is named spatial videos. The other formats that you might not immediately also think about that they are actually a 3D camera are also certain headsets. And so MetaQuest 3 with the big camera array up here is actually also a 3D camera. And this feature was also enabled through immerGallery. I'll have a slide on this coming up next where I talk more about it. And of course, Apple Vision Pro was also announced to be a 3D camera, also utilizing the front cameras to capture spatial video. And then, yeah, less than 2 weeks ago on CES, Canon actually showed a new prototype of a lens, which is also made for capturing 3D content. The lenses are very small here with the distance. It's not clear yet if this is a macro 3D lens or a regular one, but yeah, we will hopefully find out soon. Now, the 3D camera feature I mentioned on immerGallery, we were the first ones to release that, probably still the only ones. What you need to know about capturing 3D media is that the leveling is very important. Like when you have your camera, you should not have any roll rotations when you take your pictures. Ideally, you should also avoid these pitch rotations in it. And the reason is when you wear your VR headset, it will take, of course, your head orientation with the headset. But if the image you're looking at is already in a skewed position, then this will not match anymore what your real head position is and can cause motion sickness. So one of the most important rules when you do this 3D capturing first is make sure your images are reasonably leveled. In pitch, you can do a little bit more flexibility, but in roll rotation, don't try it if you want it to be for VR. And so the Quest 3 itself allows you from the operating system side to capture a 3D video by itself. So we did not invent this magic, it's just there. But what we did, and this is the important part, we actually went into this pass-through mixed reality mode, and we added a water scale to it as an overlay. So with that, using the internal IMUs of the HMD, it's the first way now where you can actually level out your headset before you press the recording button and can make sure that it is leveled. And in the top image example here, the red obviously showing here is a mismatch. The picture is not leveled. And in the bottom, everything is green, everything is ordered. Like this one down here would make a cool 3D photo because it's nicely leveled. And whatever you record on Quest will be in it. So that means if the water scale is currently active, the water scale will also be recorded in your video. And you can easily trigger it with the controller button on and off. But we also put in an alternate mode where we say, okay, 3 seconds of water scale, then 1 second off, and then on again. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned here, this bottom image where we had all these green lines is a very good photo if you would extract it from a video. And that is actually what we're doing in the app automatically. So once your water scale disappears and it had green grade leveling, the next frame where the water scale is not there anymore, we will actually take out and save for you as a 3D photo. So you get a collection of really good, nice level photos out of it while you're recording a video in reality. The resolution on Quest 3 is 3840 by 1920. So basically we have a 1:1 aspect ratio per eye. I'm now in editing mode, sorry. And 1:1 aspect ratio is not so super great for 3D actually, because all our parallax from 3D comes from left-right because our eyes are in this axis different. What actually works better is more of a wider format. So what you could imagine is, despite your original recording being in 1:1 aspect ratio, you say, okay, I'll just crop the top and bottom out of it and make a 16:9 aspect ratio out of this. And for this mode specifically, we have another option where we hide the water scale in this area where you will later crop it out. So that way you can either even record cool 3D videos in 16:9 if you later crop it, or have the photos in 16:9 without the water scale in it. Yeah, now the question, how useful is it actually? The setup is relatively difficult. We're trying to do as much as we can from our side in the app, like giving guidance what needs to be done to enable this mode. But it actually requires sending ADB commands over USB cable. Sadly, right now, there's no other way. If Meta would be providing us APIs to do certain things, we are sure we could make a very cool 3D camera app that's easy to use. One thing to consider is the rumored sales for Quest 3 are already above 1 million. So that actually means 1 million people have a free 3D camera in it and didn't purchase the headset because of the 3D camera, which is actually pretty nice. But in terms of quality, of course, it's not a dedicated camera. It's a relatively big thing. The setup is complicated. So I think it's great for experimentation where people can say, okay, I'll do my first 3D photos or videos ever. And then if someone says, yes, this is really what I want to proceed, like I see so much more value in 3D, yeah, then of course they can go out and purchase a dedicated camera as well. Now, the other type of cameras is now in the spherical image area, the 360-degree mono cameras. And they usually consist out of 2 ultra-wide 190 degrees fisheye lenses. So this is not a typo, it's not 180, it's actually 190, it's really more. The reason is why it's more is that actually you have to stitch these images together and the overlapping area is used to do that properly. The cool thing in these cameras is that a single shutter press will execute your image right away. So it's synchronized. You don't need to take 50 pictures all around you, which need to be stitched later in a complicated way with dynamic issues and so on. If objects are moving, no, it's just one press and you have a picture. So that's cool. What's also a very nice feature there is they have a full horizon correction on 360-degree cameras. And what that basically means is if this were a 360 camera, you could hold it any way. It doesn't matter. You take the picture and your IMU knows how you hold the camera when you took the picture. And because all content is a sphere, it can later be just rotated again to the perfect horizon. So you don't have to worry about aligning the camera specifically on a tripod or anything. You just take the picture and the software nicely does it for you. Also, they do have a dead zone for an invisible selfie stick. And some people are sometimes like asking, what is the technology? How do they make it invisible? What's the magic behind it? Well, the magic is just physics. If you imagine down here, there's a tripod holder. If your stick is small enough, it will actually be between the two lenses on the front and back side of these cameras. So it's just physically not visible. And during stitching, it will not be noticed. So that's a nice way of taking these pictures. Yeah, and I have some examples of these pictures, which are now for 2D usage, not for VR specifically. Like in the top left image, someone is holding the camera with a long selfie stick across his shoulder. So you get this kind of third-person view, like in a computer game. You can get a bird's perspective if you just hold your selfie stick a few meters up. Here you can make pictures which you could never do with a regular camera. You might be able to do it with a drone, but then there are a lot of drone regulations as well. And they have this little tiny planet effect, which is this like gimmick thing where you can also warp the sphere differently to make cool effects. And this YouTube video shows much more usage. So it's a really nice thing to do in the 2D area. But using it 360 mono in VR has a few problems. And one is that the resolution is usually not that great. You need to consider that you are really capturing 360 degrees by 180 degrees of content. So with some cameras having, even cameras for like $1,000 having 6.5K horizontally, that is not so much being split across 360 degrees. There are a few cameras which tell you that they have a great megapixel resolution, very high one, but they often have a sensory noisy sensor. So the results are, again, not as great as you would want it. So actually, for VR to enjoy it more, we need more resolutions than what's currently available in consumer cameras for 360. The other bigger issue on 2D cameras is also the close objects. So because we are in 2D, obviously we don't have any depth perception. So that means a object being close to the captured camera will look exactly the same in my VR headset for my left eye view as for my right eye view. And in reality, this only happens with objects which are very far away. Let's say there's a mountain kilometers away. It will basically look the same for both my eyes. So what our perception now does is if it sees an object close away, but it doesn't have any difference in the parallax, then our perception says, oh, that must be a huge object. So basically, every single capture which is very close, let's say 1 meter, 2 meter close, will look overly hugely sized in VR. And that's just the problem of being in 2D. And the other thing is, where do I focus on? If I have 20 pictures in 360 degrees, where should the VR user focus when watching them? Should they always rotate one time to see everything? Or is there a certain point they always should look at? It's not so clear. And people are also a bit lazy to rotate, what I've found out. So the first time you show them these pictures, maybe standing or in a swivel chair, they rotate heavily around and, oh, wow, I can rotate as often as I want. But this quickly fades down. And in immerGallery, I allow, of course, to rotate over the controller with a certain grip button and the thumbstick. But nevertheless, it's this, you explore a few of these images where you fully turn around. And after a while, you don't do it anymore. It's just like, yeah, okay, I'll just switch to the next image. I don't even look in all angles. Where it is, however, surprisingly good in VR is for drone panoramas, which are spherically captured. So what the drones do is they take multiple images for that, 20, 30, for example. What is the result is then that you get a very, very high quality panorama in huge size. And even if you downsize this, it remains a lot of information in the subpixels. So they look very sharp in VR. And because the drone is so far up high in the sky, the drone doesn't have the problem of close objects. So for that, 360 2D is actually very cool. Now, the other topic goes into the VR 180 stereo cameras. We have, again, two fisheye lenses, usually around 190 degrees, but this time they are oriented in the same direction. We still have a single shutter press, so we can synchronously take the picture for dynamic moving content. And the nice thing here is also we don't have any stitching at all. Like in 360, we had to stitch the two opposite images. In 180 degrees, there's nothing to stitch. It is already our image. You can do kind of a horizon correction, not as much as I've shown before with 360, because we only have a half sphere, of course, but we have 190 degrees, a little bit more than a half sphere. So smaller rotations, you can actually compensate very good in software and make sure that your image is really perfectly leveled. In terms of like the content creator, the photographer or video capture person can hide easily between the behind the camera, and that's actually one of the problems with 360. In 360, everything is captured, obviously. So where does the photographer go? And usually it means you have to remote execute or hide behind objects. In VR 180, it's just easy. You take out your camera, you take your shot, and you're basically done. In general, while 360 has a lot of value in 2D, the 180-degree format has not much value in VR. I mean, it's a great fisheye lens if you want to capture very wide-angle things, but having stereo and having 180 degrees on 2D is just not that useful. But I guess the very important part is 180 degrees stereoscopically feels much, much more immersive than any 360 monoscopically. And that gives you really the feeling like you take the picture like this with a camera. It's exactly what your eyes would see. You put your headset on and you see the same again. You rotate your head to some certain degree. It's all in stereo and you're immediately immersed. So this is a really cool format. And the cameras, I'll give you a second to watch these on the right slide. So in the earlier VR hype, there were a few cool VR 180 consumer cameras, the first three on top. They are all discontinued, unfortunately, and some of them sold pretty expensive at eBay. Only Canon just stepped in 2022 with a more professional lens, where I'll tell more about on the next slide. But let's first talk about the other Canon camera shown here on top. It's another prototype, which was again shown at CES 2024. Foldable camera, meaning you can fold it yourself to either 360 2D or 180 3D. And it actually, for a consumer-focused camera, has pretty good specs of 8K photos horizontally and 8K video, at least at 30 frames per second, which is still new for consumers. Yeah, hopefully it will come out this year. There's no exact date, but I know a lot of people are waiting for this camera. Another camera is the Calf camera shown here on the right. Started as a Kickstarter project for roughly now around $2,000. You can take 8K photos of it. The video resolution is 6K by 50 frames per second. However, it's missing a part of the top and bottom. So horizontally, it's 180 degrees. Vertically, there's a bit missing. It's not really clear why, but I guess the design between lens and sensor in the end did not turn out as expected. It's not such a big issue as it sounds, because most of the time you don't look directly down when watching these images. But it's definitely noticeable compared to the other cameras. Then there's from Teche a camera that came out last year, clearly more in the professional segment for $4,000, 8K at 30. And the Canon fisheye, dual fisheye lens, currently around $1,800, which only works with specific camera bodies from Canon, which have 45 megapixels in raw resolution, but in the end it ends up a little bit less after converting from fisheye to another format. And you can go up to 8K at 60 frames per second. For people trying to start now in this segment, it might be worthwhile to note that there's a rumor of the EOS R5 Mark II coming out in 2024 with 62 megapixels, so basically 30% more megapixels, which might be worthwhile to wait on. But also in the cheaper segment, Canon also showed just 2 weeks ago at CES an APS-C prototype of this lens. So basically, in the Canon EOS R7, which is more like the prosumer camera, a bit cheaper, there will be a cheaper option as well. If people say like this is too high for fun capturing at least. But yeah, if you want to spend more money, there's always interesting ways to do it. So FXG provides this camera with a 12K by 30 frames resolution or 8K by 60 for $20,000. And also interesting, there was this one photo leaked from a movie set or something, and it's all a rumor, so who knows. But the rumor was that it's actually a setup for Apple TV Plus, where the camera body seems to be a red 12K camera. And if you remember the Canon lens from before, these lenses here in this picture look actually very similar. So maybe it was this lens. So we'll see about it. I believe Apple is calling it Apple Immersive Video. And yeah, let's see what comes out of it. What's actually missing in the VR camera market. So the Canon prototype for consumers is not released yet. So we have basically 0 camera options between $200 and $1,000. And I mean, the Canon thing probably comes this year, but still just having one single model without competition in that space is not so great. So this is holding back adoption of these immersive media formats. And yeah, so what if VR 180 would actually work in your smartphone? Yeah, now with Apple showing 3D in the iPhone 15 Pro, yeah, it could be that many more smartphone manufacturers are jumping on that wagon and say, okay, you can also capture 3D video on our phone. And yeah, so this idea I had a little bit earlier. And so in early 2023, in a university collaboration with Würzburg, here in Bavaria and Germany, we talked with students and we set up a project to simulate what it would be to have a spherical camera on the smartphone, a stereo camera. And what we ended up using is this one image here where you see 123 degrees. That is what the ultra wide angle lenses of one of the like $500, $600 Samsung phones has actually included. We did have a phone from Realme with a 150 degree fisheye lens, which we wanted to use first, but it actually turned out that this lens, we were not able to get it to run over the regular Android APIs. There must have been some special cases, but nevertheless, we finished the experiment with 123. So there's not so much missing, as you see, an area to go to 180 degrees. And what the students then actually did is, yeah, they took two smartphones because we wanted to have a 3D capture, obviously. And we couldn't build a smartphone from scratch. That's a bit over the topic. So we connected them over Bluetooth. We synchronously, with one button press, took some pictures on both. We transferred the one picture onto the other phone. And instead of the perspective rectangular picture that you have, we also converted it into this spherical format, the equirectangular format. And yeah, made a nice VR 180 picture out of it. But of course, the degrees that the lens did not cover, we just kept black. And yeah, so one of the reasons was here also to show this to smartphone makers in, hey, look, you almost have everything in your phone already to do really cool ultra wide angle 3D photos, but yeah, somehow the smartphone progress has been a bit slower in the last years, at least it feels like this. And yeah, so we built this. We also put that in a publication, which is currently conditionally accepted for IEEE VR 2024, which is in March in Florida. And the students will actually be there showing this prototype. So if you're in the area, please say hi and check it out. Well, but so after we finished our work and published or submitted it for review and so on, suddenly a VR 180 smartphone project popped up on Kickstarter from a Chinese company called Slam Inc. And yeah, the lifetime was sadly less than 1 month. It was canceled again after not too many people subscribing for it. And I guess in retrospect, the question is why did it die so soon? So here, my opinions at least, the smartphone form factor is a bit critical. So if I have already an expensive phone from a known brand, do I really want to replace that one with another unknown phone, which was more in the cheaper area, $400? Maybe not. Feature-wise, this one only had 4K VR 180 video, which is not really pleasant. And a few people in forums were asking, how can I actually take the picture without my fingers in it? And yeah, what you need to imagine, because you capture really the full half sphere, basically means that if you press here your shutter button, all your fingers would be in this half sphere. And even the consumer cameras I showed earlier, which are discontinued, they were thicker, but still I have so many images where I had my fingers in it or I borrowed it to friends, and people just don't hold it right, and you get your real huge fingers in the images, and they are hard to fix because it's all in stereo. So, and the other reason, by the way, many people also said, yeah, they would like to have a VR 180 camera with them all the time, but they don't trust crowdfunding anymore. They had bad experience with previous ones. So yeah. Nevertheless, Slam Inc. Did not give up. They are now designing a camera, which seems to be more towards the consumer market. And here's one of the first pictures they just released a few days ago as a design prototype. It will probably change. But at least there's some movement happening in that space. Now we talked about the cameras and I mentioned a few resolutions in between, but what resolution do I actually need for immersive videos and photos? And the two headsets I picked here from what I would say is very common between consumers, with the Quest 3 obviously having 9 megapixels of resolution if you count in both eyes. And Apple Vision Pro, with the higher price, of course, you get a 23 megapixel display. And most of it is based on what I do in immerGallery with VR 180 3D photos. So theoretically, the resolution that Canon can do with the R5 body and the dual fisheye lens we've seen before in the equirectangular format of 8K horizontally and 4K vertically matches very well what you want to display on Quest 3. That means, of course, Apple Vision Pro with over 2 times the resolution means you easily could display twice as more detailed content there. And what I marked noteworthy here is I mentioned before the drone content taking huge panoramas from multiple shots and then downsizing them looks so super sharp. And this is not the case with like the current Canon setup. So even though the 8K by 4K is what you want to display, you would want this captured in higher resolution and in the end downsize it to 8K by 4K. Reasons are moire effects, for example. They will be, obviously, if they're downsized, they will disappear or be less noticeable. But the other thing is like all the subpixel detail. It's so important. And in our sample gallery in immerGallery, we have these drone shots, and next to it, you can compare it to one of the Canon shots, and you will say, cool, Canon is stereo and it's great, but the sharpness from the drone shot, it's like really amazing. So ideally, this is also like a message to the camera manufacturers who have been shown like research sensors with 100 megapixels and more, where many people don't have a real answer. Why do I even need 100 megapixel sensors? The reason is VR. If you want to span your pixels across a half sphere or a full sphere, you need this high resolution, and just downsize it later. Don't be crazy about it loading a overly sized image. But the detail will be in there, and we need higher res cameras for that. Yeah, the other term of resolution is, of course, the time. So what video frame rate do I need? I mean, there's 30 hertz, obviously very common in video, 60 hertz is common, 90 is not so common. But most headsets actually run at 90 hertz, and many even go up to 120 hertz. And what you need to think about in frame rates, because many of us have in our head, yeah, cinema is 24 frames or 48 in some cases, and everyone thinks 60 is super smooth. But it actually depends. So if you capture your full half sphere and you have a camera on a tripod, and there's a person like 1 meter away walking from one side to the other, yeah, it will not be smooth anymore at 60 frames per second. There's so much change in space where the person moves along that it will be choppy even at 60 frames per second. And yeah, now many cameras do have only 30 FPS, and it's okay to do a bit, let's say, more static scenes, so there's still value. But potentially also this means you can actually introduce motion sickness from having these super immersive videos, which are just not smooth. So if you can, 60 frames per second is clearly the better way, and almost the best choice we have today at all. I actually think 90 frames per second would be much cooler, and also talked with Canon about it, they seemed a bit more surprised because they always think in frame rates in terms of what the common video frame rates are, but not so much about headset frame rates. So I think in some cases 6K at 90 hertz or 7K at 90 hertz would be preferable to 8K at 60 hertz. And in terms of pixels and processing and so on, at least 6K at 90 might match what you could do if you would just implement it. But many cameras that can capture 8K just don't have a 6K video mode, and the encoding chips probably don't do it. And going one step further, I think even 120 FPS would be cool for videos, which would be the double of the already known 60 hertz. So maybe that's a format where camera manufacturers would more easily go into. Okay, so now let's compare. I talked a lot about photos, but almost everything I said applies to videos as well. But let's have a bit of a comparison between VR photos and VR videos. So immerGallery, by the way, is only an image viewer as of right now. There have been, of course, requests for video as well, so we'll see. But what is the value in photos specifically for VR? So usually you do have higher image quality. You have a high resolution image. You have very low compression on your single photo. Just watching the photo, you usually don't get motion sickness. And in general, by presenting someone a photo, you had a certain thought about it, like you present this photo and did not sort it out for a specific reason. So it's like very spot on. You have pretty low file sizes, let's say around 10 megabyte per image. However, the photo is of course static. It's very hard to capture any dynamic changes in a photo, obviously. And usually a photo does not come along with audio. Now, in comparison, if you look at VR video, of course, it can capture dynamic content, and of course, video captures audio automatically for you, so that's good. However, most videos, at least the ones you will find when you try to watch VR videos, are in lower image quality and in different terms. For some, the resolution is just too low. For some, the compression is way too high, and for some, the frame rate is too low. If you would want it in high frame rate, high resolution, and so on, you would probably have a very high file size of guessing 500 to 1,000 megabyte per minute if you wanted it really good, which is also like very bad for downloading and everything. And let's say unexperienced VR videographers, and there are many, unfortunately, make movements that cause motion sickness. So weird turning of the camera or rotating of the camera in stereoscopic content in a video is something that can easily cause motion sickness, and it's happening too often in videos. Stabilization is, of course, also a topic in videos, could also cause motion sickness, but there's gimbals and other technical stuff that helps you there. And specifically in 360 video, the stitching lines where your 180 views were, or 190 images were stitched together, they become a bit more apparent after a while. You can sometimes see, okay, here was the stitching line. So what does it mean? So if I'm watching 30 minutes of random photos or 30 minutes of random videos, I'm mostly happy after watching the photos. And after watching random videos, I'm mostly not so excited and sometimes have motion sickness because I don't know, what will be happening in the video. And there might be weird movements in it. So this brings us to the immersive storytelling. Basically, the idea is combine the best of the photo and video world in a VR slideshow. So instead of thinking about a single photo without any context, you think about a series of consecutive photos which tell a story. We add audio for background and voiceovers. In immerGallery specifically, we have the special effects, snow, rain, leaves, meadow, and certain environments like the hot air balloon, great for drone pictures. We have interactive birds flying around. We have some special setup for St. Patrick's Day with clover leaves falling around, and Halloween and Christmas and whatever. And of course, you can mix and match any formats you like. You could start with a 2D kind of an intro slide, then you go in a 180 3D image, then later you have something where you say, this must be viewed in 360. So you can switch and mix whatever you want to your creativity. And so basically, of course, as I said, we try to take the best out of both worlds. So we do have the high image quality. We usually don't have motion sickness from that. We are spot on with what we show. The file size is still low. Audio doesn't take much space. Now we solved that we do have audio through background and voiceovers. And at least we approach dynamics a little bit with the special effects that I mentioned. The audio gives a more dynamic feeling, and also the consecutive images where the story evolves over time gives a little bit of dynamic feeling. But of course, if you want a full dynamic scene, then you need to take video. That is obviously something you have to do. So after hearing all that and listening to it, you might have the question, why is not everyone using that if it's so super great? And well, a bunch of reasons. So one is the lack of the 3D and VR cameras in all kind of price ranges. And that specifically means right now the consumer price range for VR 180 stereo. But for 360 also, the question is, as I mentioned, we need higher resolution. So we would need more professional cameras, but still affordable. And the other issue is, of course, VR headset adoption. It is going up, of course, but still, if you look at the worldwide population, not so many people really do have a VR headset, and all these cameras, at least the VR 180 3D cameras, only make sense in a VR headset. The other issue is, if you want to take a good-looking 2D photo, you can do it with your smartphone today in one click, and you don't have to do any settings, and it's super easy. In 3D, well, it's one dimension more, obviously. There's so much more stuff that you need to know as a 3D photographer or video taker. And many people don't even know the rules. And I'm myself discovering, even after years of 3D photography, discovering things where I think, oh yeah, I need to remember that for the next time to make it different. So we definitely need more guidance from the cameras. So it's easier, but also tutorials, whatever, would help a lot in kind of helping people to make cool, good-looking 3D content, because it's easy to make bad 3D photos. And at least the situation when I founded immerVR 2 years ago, this whole VR photo software ecosystem was, and some is still somewhat flawed, until immerGallery. All image viewers actually required you to take a process for a manual image format selections, and almost all still do, except immerGallery. And there's also no really good social and sharing options for VR photos today, except immerGallery. So let's talk about this automatic image format detection. This is just taken out of the code, but an older version. It actually got more complex by now. So even so I showed in the beginning the different image formats, the representation internally can of course still be different. All 3D photos can either be in the same image file left and right, or they can be top, bottom. There's different formats from proprietary formats from different vendors. There are special, all kind of everything special cases. So this list is actually longer now today. And you need to know it if you want to display the picture correctly. And you might ask yourself, okay, just look in the image metadata and you should be done. Yeah, not always. If it's there, of course, it's great. Too often metadata is completely missing in images. For example, people save their image when they edit it intermediately in bitmap for whatever, probably historical reasons. They convert it later to JPEG and there's no more metadata. Same for JPEG to PNG to JPEG again, and so on. And even worse, during looking at so many cases, I sometimes discover images with wrong metadata. And then it's even more interesting what to do to, to fix it. But yeah, so what is this process of manual image format selection that other image viewer apps in VR are forcing you to do? It's actually this process, and it's this process per image. So imagine you have a folder with 20 mixed images. Some are 2D, 3D, some 360, some 180. And for each image, I'll just do it for one now, but you have your input image, throwing it into the app. You first need to tell the app, is my image actually a 2D or a 3D image? Let's say it's a 3D image over here. Okay, is it a regular 3D low field of view image? Is it a 180 or a 360 image? Okay, let's say it's 180. Okay, now is your 180 image actually in the equirectangular image format, or is it still in the fisheye format? Let's say equirectangular. Okay, so is it in the left-right order or in the top-bottom order? And after you answered all these questions, you can look at one image, and good luck when you switch to the next image and you have to start up here again. So what we did in immerGallery is the automatic image format selection, input, image, immerGallery, and you view your image. And it works very well. I would, it's hard to say a number, but I would say probably for practical cases, 99% correct detection. Sometimes I get an email like, look, this image was detected wrong, and I'm trying to find out why, and then hopefully fix it for future cases where the same happens. I'm not going into the detail here how this is done because this was part of a patent application. So let's skip to the next topic. But yeah, this is one of the things that makes image viewing much easier and more common in VR. So I mentioned the sharing aspect. So you can share VR photos in immerGallery through a certain way. And the method is that you need to have self-hosted zip files of your images, or images with audio and special effects, everything like one gallery, it needs to be a zip file. And you need to host it yourself. That means you have to put it either on your own web server, or you can use Dropbox where you can create HTTP links out of it. And this is actually the interface here. So within the app, if you know there's a zip file somewhere, you can download it right away, and it gets extracted and you can jump to it and watch it. And ideally, because typing in VR is not so convenient, one of the short URL parts we are supporting specifically is shorturl.at from Austria. And they generate you short URLs with only 5 characters. So this is really relatively easy. So ideally, you go into our download thing, you switch it on short URL, you put in 5 characters, press go, bang, you have everything. Now, of course, if you have like a photographer who's releasing regularly new galleries, they don't want to send their friends over email or something all the time. Look, here's a new zip file. So this kind of feed-based system, we put that in, and we're using Pastebin for this as an intermediate place to host it. So Pastebin, you can basically upload any kind of text input. for free. And here, for example, someone can manage his own feed, having a gallery of Regensburg at this address, having, I don't know, whatever, Rome gallery on this address, and so on. And we go to Pastebin. You have to add the Pastebin ID, which is a bit more than 5. It's, is it 8 characters? You press on go, and we parse this file here and extract all the URLs from it with title you had before. You click on it, you can download it. And this way you can handle your own feed with whatever you want to share with other people. And in general, it's cool, but I realize, of course, it is not as simple as what generation smartphone is used to, where you just have one single click and you share it to everyone. But what you need to consider is that we are a relatively small company, and there are certain data privacy and legal aspects which are specifically in the EU probably a little bit stronger. So this is a way we can do it right now, and people can do basically with it everything they want. But of course, in the future, we would want to make this even more easy with one-click solutions and so on. But yeah, we have to see how that goes. All right, so now another research topic, or maybe do we have any questions right now, because this changes a bit the topic. So now might be a good time for questions, intermediate questions. So Ken raised his hand. Can someone please put him on voice?
Hi, I'm not sure whether I missed it, but are there any, is there any kind of hardware to be able to capture 360 stereo panoramas?
Thanks for the question. That is something I left out. There is actually something from Insta360 in the, I would say, very professional segment. I think it starts at, let me remember, maybe 10,000 for the Insta360 Pro 2, and then you go to 16,000 for Insta360 Titan. And what they do is they actually have a bigger sphere with, I believe it's 8 cameras all around it, and they stitch a 360 3D out of it. There has been another system from Wuse for consumers, actually. It's pretty cheap these days, I think $300 on eBay. They also had 8 cameras, and they basically took more like the cameras were 4 stereo cameras basically in all 4 directions, and they sort of stitched it together. The resolution is not that great, but there are options for it as well. One of the reasons why I didn't go into it too much is as many of the 360 3D pictures feel a bit weird, I would say. Might be related to the stitching artifacts in stereo. Might also be related that the formats that we use these days, where we just say, okay, for left eye view, we have one half of the image, and for the right eye view, we have the other half of the image. But actually having a 3D view for your full rotation, where your eyes are always a little bit different, my suspicion is that this format is not super sufficient in doing that. And I think there's some research, if you want to Google it, called omnidirectional stereo. And I think they talk more about this, that when your head moves with your axis, but your eyes in front, all these like conflicts where you have to change things. So mostly I think 360 3D is then for many cases worse than 180 3D because of this kind of weird look, and also the more complicated capturing, which 360 2D has as well, where you have to hide as a photographer. But yeah, good point. I should, in the next talk, should include one slide to also talk more about 360 3D. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question right now?
Yes, there's a question on.
Could you speak a little bit louder?
There's a question on YouTube.
Oh, I'm barely hearing you. Sorry. No, I'm not hearing anything. Can you maybe type it in the chat? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
There's a question on YouTube.
There is a question on YouTube?
Yeah.
No.
I put the question in chat.
Ah, okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Very good question and very, very observant. Probably already knowing where it's going. Yes. So the question, does the parallax effect of stereo 180 pictures break down at the edges? Yes. Yes, sadly it does. So mostly when you take these pictures, you want your main subject to be pretty centered, and the rest is sort of like artificial cool stuff, which gives you the cool immersion in your periphery. But if you start looking towards the borders of your 180-degree image, this is something you should not do, not for a long time at least. There's someone who publishes a lot of panorama and 3D content called Pohl. And if you Google his name, he actually has an article on specifically the Canon lens and the parallax of these spherical images, and he's also mentioning there that it degrades. For him, it seems to be degrading too fast. He didn't sound very happy about it. But I think in practice, it's not as bad as the numbers or the visualizations he has are showing. But yeah, it's a very good point. Like, of course, on the very left edge, you have basically, zero parallax. In real life, actually, because the Canon lens has pretty thick, outstanding lenses, you do not even have 180 degrees without seeing the neighboring lens, which is one of the topics in 180 degrees. You always see your neighbor lens. So realistically seen, you have a 173-degree camera because the lenses are already cropped away. So, but still, do not continuously watch the borders on VR 180 images, but focus on the main area and great periphery to make it immersive.
Could you repeat again what water scale is?
Another term is electronic level, basically to align something to be even with the IMUs to have no rotation. Maybe the term water scale is from the German word too directly translated, sorry. But you know what I mean with electric level?
Okay.
Call it a level.
You just call it level. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, I need to fix that later in the slides. All right, cool. Any other questions right now, or?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What was that conference you mentioned in Florida?
That's the IEEE VR 2024, which is happening in March in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right, cool.
I do have one other question. How much have people tried to do synthetic 3D with AI, for instance? Is that a thing? Yeah,
some people are trying, and they are emailing me that something might not work correctly. It's not going well, so maybe I'll just, for this case specifically, I'll jump to one of my slides where I'm talking about it later, but we can also do it just right now. So my second to last slide actually shows some open research or product ideas. And a lot of these AI tools are not stereo aware. They do not know that your input image is 3D or for the generations that you really want 3D. That affects image upscaling. Like if someone knows the tool Topaz AI, it works very well for photos, for 2D photos. For 3D photos, it's a bit trickier because, of course, some detail it puts in when upscaling is invented, I would say, and it does not consistently invent the same detail for left and right eye view. So I've seen upscaled stereo images which look very bad from AI upscaling. So this it can be used to a small degree, but you need to be careful with what you're doing. And the same goes for video frame upscaling, like Topaz Video. it's also not 3D aware. I think the frame rate upscaling is not that of a big issue because, but the image upscaling definitely is an issue with AI. In general, the other thing that's missing is good 3D image editing tools. Like if I want to blur a face in a 3D image, I always have to do it twice. I have to do it for left side, for right side. Then I ideally have hopefully done it in a way which doesn't destroy the depths from the blur. And basically something like Photoshop or Affinity Photo for 3D is missing. And editors in VR in general are missing, like what I want to edit my blurred face on an image directly in VR. I don't want to do it on a PC and copy it back later. Same for videos with cutting and so on. And yeah, AI image generation, as the question was, relatively bad from what I've seen. So I know some people are telling the AI, give me an output in 3D side by side. And the AI does something where you see two pictures, but it doesn't work very well. And this question actually just came up today or yesterday. There's a Photo 3D group. Yeah, probably if you Google Photo 3D group, you will probably find it. It's like one of these older systems before social media happened. And one person was referring to a ChatGPT version where he seemed to be able to put in some commands to sometimes get out 3D images. And I tried it with two requests, and they, did not look like anything I want to look at in VR. So basically, this is a very open topic, and 3D side by side, the regular 3D is just one thing. Of course, if you'd want to do the 180-degree 3D stuff, I don't think those can be generated today. At least I didn't try it or didn't hear it. I know one person, he generates 2D AI content and then displays it in 360. But that has distortion problems, of course. And so basically, I do not know that there's any good way today to do that, to generate it over AI, but I think it would be very cool if there would be. So if you're looking for research problems, maybe there is one.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, then I think I'll continue here, and later we have, of course, more time for questions. So now another research topic that we did together with the University of Würzburg on the games engineering chair. And the topic is about, fear triggers when watching images. And it is much more important in VR than on a 2D display. If in 2D, I browse through random images and I see an object which triggers fear for me, let's say a spider when I scroll through Reddit posts, then I either look away or I scroll down and ignore it. But VR, as I mentioned, we have this like super realistic 3D immersive stereo stuff. If someone makes a picture of a giant 3-meter appearing spider and I switch to it right away, I'll probably get a heart attack and I will never use VR again. And this, of course, applies to many kind of fears. So what can we do to make this more comfortable for users who want to browse random images? And so Amelie Hetterich, who works also for us and is at the university, she did a bachelor's thesis on this topic, which we just published at the ICAT ECFE conference. This is the EG stands for Eurographics, so it's kind of the VR, XR, AR part of Eurographics, and was in December in Dublin. So we just published this, and what the problem basically, you have something like Instagram for VR, you will have random images in any kind of formats. How can you make it so people don't have fear in it, or less at least? And as I mentioned before, with immerGallery, we do not only have photos, we have audio as well. We have certain special effects, and we also have haptics in some way. In our case, just haptics for the UI interactions, but nevertheless, there are haptics. And the problem is users can get discomfort with that. And what we wanted to do is to apply user-specific mitigation strategies for these cases. with the extra difficulty that stereo and spherical images are differently handled than whatever you know as your regular rectangular 2D image. And how can you automate this process? And so we started off in creating a FEAR user profile that the user can answer for himself in the app, in the research branch of the app. Right now, we have a few fears here listed. In total, we actually found around 150 fears, which seem to be medically based. And we thought about all of them actually, and many of them you can group together, like fear of cats and fear of dogs. You would probably do the same, almost the same. And yeah, so here you can, right now with a Pohl, you can say true or false, basically with a checkbox if it applies or not. But you can also imagine in certain cases, you do a little finer granularity, like low, medium, high, or some float value. All right, so user specifies what fears they have. And then what are the fear mitigation strategies? And it's not like we invented all of these. It's basically like, yeah, we were looking at what options do we have available, which ones make sense. And I mean, I guess, easiest and most brute force option is we just remove an image where our user has a fear and we know the image has a fear trigger from our playlist. We just don't show it. We go into a few other ones over the next slide, like blurring the trigger or replacing it. We can think about reducing the field of view in the headset, like instead of having your super immersive 100 degrees usually or 110 degrees field of view, we artificially limit it with this vignette effect, so it's not as immersive for you. We can change stereo to mono. We'll talk about the artificial floor against fear of heights and some other topics in the next slide. So let's just go directly in the topics. Because this is a research project with a bachelor thesis with a very limited time, we were tagging the fear triggers manually. And what you need to know here is in immerGallery, every image file can have a corresponding .immerVR file, which is a text file or a control file, definitely in text readable form, where, for example, we link audio to it, we link the special effects to it, we can add descriptions to it. And we added a new sort of command in this kind of scripting language there for phobia specifically. So you have the keyword phobia, then you have what kind of fear it is. And then you mark in your image through a rectangle where this fear trigger actually is. We also have a tool coming up soon where you can generate these rectangular values automatically, but you can, of course, always calculate them yourself in any image tool. Yeah, and what is the example here? Yeah, let's just blur the trigger or censor it in this case. So let's assume in this image there would have been a dog before. Then what we do, because we know our user has fear of dogs, we will just gray it out. And so the user can still watch the picture. Maybe there would have been some important objects here of value, but the fear trigger is at least gone. But more interesting is then to replace the trigger. So the user has still a high immersion and maybe doesn't even know something changed in the image. And their AI and painting can be used, or some like graphics tools call it healing brush. And we tested this with the fear of insects in this case. So we had luckily right out of our office, we had an insect visiting us and took a picture of it. And then, yeah, we just photoshopped it out. And yeah, now fear trigger is gone. The picture can be enjoyed as planned. And here on the right side, the research from NVIDIA, already a few years old, actually shows how greatly this can be done. Like there's so much image content missing in some of these parts, but it can be restored so greatly. So the tools are really good for that. The manual tools are really good for that. The other big topic in VR, also very more intense, is fears related height. And so according to statistics, 3 to 6% of population have a strong fear of height, and 30% have at least a weak fear of height. Probably like they wouldn't go to therapy or something for it, but if they would be in a situation with extreme height and they look down, they would be like, oh, not so much my cup of tea. So it's definitely something to consider. And already like, how long was it? 30 years ago or so, we have a reference in the paper I mentioned later. They were already experimenting with putting artificial floors in VR as a stabilizer against this fear of height. And we do the same in immerGallery. So if you have fear of heights, we can put this artificial floor in here. However, it comes also with a bit of a drawback. So in this case, the photo was taken without any like depth conflicts. So this fits perfectly in, no problem. But here it was actually taken inside this kind of ski lift thing. And now you already can guess it, like our artificial floor with a nice rail so you don't fall over is actually interfering with the real rail in this image here. And so one of the questions is, what do we do? Do we want to destroy the image or the immersion or not? And here the solution then actually comes down to the finer granular specifications in the profile. So this is screenshot directly from the app, from the product. We can actually say we have a medium intense acrophobia, fear of heights. In that case, if it would have conflicted with the image, we would not have shown the artificial floor. But if someone said before, I have a really high fear of heights, yeah, then we would not have cared if it's a 3D image or if it does any wrong depth perceptions, then it's more important for the user to be protected from the fear of heights. So we would put it in always. And this can be done today in the app. You can do that yourself and test it. Yeah, now as we mentioned, images is one thing, but we have multiple sensory cues. And even talking about a fear or hearing a dog bark in an audio track can also already trigger fear. And so what we can do also as well is, at least in the research branch, mark audio, say, okay, between second 50 and 55, there's dog barking. If you have a fear of dogs, we will mute in this time frame, or worst case, we just remove the whole audio for you. Now, the other sensory input is haptics, which we use mostly, as I mentioned, for UI interaction. If you hover over elements, you feel like you're really interacting with it, so you get more immersion from that. And in the future, of course, we may have full body haptics, or there's also haptic vests and lots of interesting things. But of course, if you want to decrease the immersion because you know there's something with phobias happening, you don't want to increase immersion. So one way would be, of course, to just say, if there's a fear match in this image, then let's disable all kind of haptics so it feels less real. And the surrounding aspects of image viewing, like I mentioned, we have this special effect. We named that one the Meadowverse. And you take any image, like a 360 image in this case, of a meadow environment, and we artificially added interactive butterflies and dust and pollen and everything. And it looks cool. It gives really a more lifelike, dynamic feeling. But then, of course, we get contacted by a user telling us he has a fear of butterflies and he will never use this effect again. So what we did against this, and it's also already in the product, we have now just two options. So you can enable the meadow environment, or you can enable meadow, no butterflies. So the user in this case can directly switch it. Of course, you can imagine the script files I mentioned before. We can also match that with the user profile and do it automatically. Same as there's also a fear of birds. And you could also think about, instead of just disabling it and missing out the dynamic parts, if you just switch it. So if someone has a fear of butterflies, and we do have birds as an alternative, so let's show them the birds instead, so at least the scene still feels more immersive. Another thing we did not expect but found out during this work was that some users expressed that they are just feeling afraid of whatever the next image might be in general. And what we did according to this feedback is then we added to the controller in VR a next thumbnail. So you will already get, if you look at the controller, get a hint. All right, the next image is a mountain area, and it's not a huge spider, for example. So this solves or makes this problem at least better. And the second thing, we did this anyway, but we also have a smooth fade out and fade in between images. So we're not with one immediate frame click, bang, showing you a new picture, but we fade out, fade in, and this might also be a little bit better in case of fears. Then the case where this is just in the research version, but the case where some user specified, okay, in this image, there is a fear trigger docs, but I'm not telling you where it is. Maybe because I'm too lazy to calculate this rectangle of doc stuff. And in that case, we have a dialogue with the user in our research version where we can actually ask the user, what do you want to do? Do you want to skip this image completely? Do you want to do nothing? Do you want to see it in as it was planned to be? Do you want to use this vignette effect to lower field of view? Or if it was a 3D image, do you want to view it in 2D? Yeah, and how does it actually look now in the product? So the next update for the March version or end of February, we'll see, will then include arachnophobia and carnophobia. And let's talk about the carnophobia a bit. Fear of meat or animals for eating. And the bigger user group might even be like, let's say, vegetarians who just do not want to see meat or animals for eating. And fitting for this, we have actually the Osaka Gallery coming up in March. And it shows a food court with raw fish on sushi and Kobe beef and fried crab and whatever. And so if people will have the carnophobia setting enabled, they will only be able to see Osaka Castle and the ice cream. But the other pictures they will not see, or they will see a black picture. We need to decide how to implement it actually now. But this one is also rolling out soon. And yeah, we'll about the question was already about AI before. So this also hits into this area to automate all this and not have it manual anymore. How can you do it automated for all images? And what I mentioned before, the AI image tools are currently not really stereo aware or know about 180 degrees or 360 degrees. And the most popular image format to store this media in is the equirectangular format, which basically represents 360 horizontally, 180 vertically. And in the center, you almost have no distortions. That's cool. But the closer you get to the poles, the bigger your distortions are getting. And what we then found out when we wanted to look into automation more is that common AI text recognition tools also do not work well with 360 degree. So down here is this text in German, not detected from the AI. Only when we converted our image into multiple perspective images and we put it in AI, it was actually able to find these. There's a bit more detail in the full paper. And now the sort of last topic, just a few images, about 6 degrees of field freedom media. So the current images I've shown were all 3 degrees of freedom, so you can rotate your head, but you cannot do positional movements in them. So photogrammetry is a very popular method, often used by drones, where you take 50 pictures, let's say, and you generate out a 3D mesh of it. Dynamic content is, of course, a problem because you take pictures at different times. They have a pretty high processing time. And the output you get is not anything I would call photorealistic. You can see it in this mesh already. This wall here should probably be perfectly flat, but it's like a bumpy surface. Let's jump to the next one, the nerves, neural radiance fields, very popular topics these days, AI-based, but still the same issues as photogrammetry regarding dynamic content and regarding the output not always looking photorealistically. And here's another example of it with the product Luma AI. A friend of mine used it recently on his vacation. And it generates this cool video where everything looks a bit more 3D, and it is cool. But nevertheless, there are always some elements in it which breaks the immersion again. And here also on the ground, it's hard to see here, but this was steps-wise. This was wrong. This was at a wrong depth, the floor. So these are very cool. and it's an interesting way of storing your vacation memories, but for being fully immersed in a story may not be the right choice. And of course, yeah, research goes on, and it is getting better and better with 3D Gaussian splatting. Very fitting here, SIGGRAPH. They got much better quality, and it is cool, but there's still elements in it which could easily break the immersion in VR. And there's another service called Livecast VR. They offer you specifically for the Canon captured VR 180 photos to generate a depth map for it, and or use it to have kind of a fake 3D view. You can test it on Quest 2 or Quest 3 yourself. They have a sample that you can watch for free. And I tested it out with one of my cosplay photo shootings here and had a depth map generated out of it. And it may be a bit hard to see here now, but this lady on the right, she wears some kind of small glove thing or something around her hand in a darker color. And you can see in the depth maps, this was wrongly guessed to be something different. Also here on the left side, there are these like intrusions in the wall. And if you look at the depth map values, you can already guess here, these are not matching what you really have. And in the 3D samples they have, it also looks cool, but it is relatively low resolution, and you do notice some errors after a while. So my take, at least on it, and everyone can have their own opinions, of course, is that I rather prefer a photorealistic VR 180 photo versus this kind of, I can move my head a little bit more, but I get errors and I'm thrown out of immersion. So the whole SIGGRAPH stuff, I think it is great what's coming out, and there's a lot of fantastic research, and once it works much better, it has a huge potential to be very, very big. But what we need to realize today, and this is also where we are a company doing products for people today, is how long everything takes. And even today, with the first 3D photo happening in 1849, we have not widely established any kind of stereoscopic media in the population. In 2024, neither 3D cameras nor 3D viewers are common between normal, regular consumers. So yeah, so I think SIGGRAPH will be cool, will get much more traction in the future, but the realistic expectation, at least if you're targeting consumers and you want full immersion, is that it's more of a longer term, mid to longer term thing to happen. So I talked about the open research problems already, so we skip this and we come to the conclusion. So yeah, generally, and I hope I excited you as well, there's very a lot of cool stuff in 3D and VR happening both for photos and videos. In my opinion, for VR, very likely the 180 3D format will take the lead for various reasons. The smartphone 3D option will hopefully become much more common, and I expect it also to become much wider field of view. So we will have some kind of spherical images, even if they're not 180, but it will allow a little bit more head movement in VR. In general, we do need better software. Some of it is in development. I'm trying to do my part on it. But as I mentioned, like editors, AI, and so on, there's a lot of stuff still missing to make things easy. And yeah, SIGGRAPH, as mentioned, yeah, we'll be able to do much more even, but might be a little bit further out. And yeah, so I was talking pretty long, I see. Thank you very much for staying here and listening to everything. And I'm happy if you join me on all kind of social medias. Just add me there, email me, try immerGallery, and also please ask many questions. I'm here as long as you guys like. So we can discuss everything. Good. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, I want to ask Daniel. So, do you have any? You have talked about a lot of hardware. So, if someone wants to get started creating images, which hardware would you actually recommend they buy just to get started right now? If you want to create 3D images and view them.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on your budget. Let me click to the slide. So if you have already Quest 3 and you just want to experiment just a very little bit, then use Quest 3 and immerGallery, because that's your basic start. If you have a lower budget, let's say $300, $400, you might want to take the Kucam Ego. I have to say it's not a perfect product. There are certain things not working ideal. You might want to read up on it on forums, but it could be a jump start into that. If you want to start with VR 180, as I mentioned, it's difficult right now because there's no consumer versions. I would probably recommend going for this Canon consumer camera as soon as it comes out. If you say I want to jump in professionally right away, then I would recommend the Canon 5.2mm lens, ideally with the R5 Mark II body, which will of course also be more expensive than if you take the current model. And for 360 mono, I would also wait on the Canon camera, but because it also has good 8K capabilities. But yeah, these are like my personal recommendations from photographing a lot. These days, I do almost all of the images I do for immerGallery, where we have actually like weekly galleries. If you use the app every week, you get a free gallery. And almost all images I take are with this Canon setup and the R5 camera, and that works very well with the electronic level, which some of the other cameras don't have. And as I mentioned, this leveling is so super important to do it right. So yeah, that would be my recommendations basically.
Okay. Okay. Actually, I have another quick question. I'm not sure if would be possible, but would it be like reasonable to do like get data from like the Google Street View and make images from that you can look into in VR?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's actually an app for that. Not
There
mine.
is there?
Yeah, there is one. It's called Wander, with WANDER. I need to either Wander or Wanderer, I'm not sure anymore. And they actually use Google Street View photos, 360 mono photos. And you can basically browse anywhere in the world with that. You have the world map, can zoom in. I like it a lot. I've been using it a lot in the past. Just to see places where I would never go myself. But you have to know that this content is not very filtered. Like in terms of quality, you sometimes get not so great looking images, because like basically everyone can upload an image to Street View, no matter what the quality is. But the ones you are getting, which are good quality, I do like a lot. Like there's Antarctic, or yeah, many countries I would never visit, and it is cool. So definitely would recommend to try it out. Yeah. Any other questions so far?
Let's see. Let me see in the QA. If there, I guess. If there's no more questions, maybe we can. Is there any more questions? Maybe we can.
Yeah, looks like most people.
Thank you very much there.
Yeah,
like
okay,
the thing that still pictures or collection of still pictures. So did Viewmaster have it right with what they did?
Yeah. I think it's very cool what they did already back then. Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's many old like from what we will have soon also in March, I believe, old stereoscope images from 1890 or 1895, the American Civil War. And what they used in this time, not having a MetaQuest headset, they had this like physical metal thing that you put on your head, and in front of it you put this stereo image, and they had a limiter for the left and right eye. And that way they were viewing already 3D photos, and apparently that time, long time ago, where people couldn't just travel to another continent, this was also very popular to get impressions about other countries.
So you were talking about phobias there. You know, we looked at some of the things with VR to desensitize people with phobias. Have you looked at that or aspect of, since you're categorizing all these?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Very good point. So yeah, VR exposure therapy, I think we referenced it also somewhere in our paper, has of course been used so far. And yeah, having exactly these methods available, as we mentioned, where we can blur out certain areas. Let's go to the doc example here. Is exactly what you could use, like mix and match. You could slowly get users used to fears in guided therapy from a professional, of course, where you say, okay, in the first case, a spider or dog is fully removed, and in another case, we do this vignette where we look at it in a very small, tiny field of view. And I think measuring all that with biosensors for pulse and sweatiness in addition would make a very interesting project.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so no more questions then, or?
Yeah. Okay, if there are
Okay.
no more questions,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks a lot, Daniel, for
Yeah.
your presentation. It was really great having you here, especially since it's really early in the morning, your time. You could join us. We really enjoyed having you back in the Silicon Valley, at least virtually, for a little while. I mean, I know Daniel was up in here in Intel working for a while, so yeah, thanks a lot for your presentation, and we'll get this posted on YouTube, and hopefully more people can see it and learn about it.
Great, yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me. It was a pleasure. It was also very, very cool here to get feedback and questions from everyone. I think Ken just raised his hand. Has Ken one more question, or?
No, I was trying to find something
Okay.
that would have a thumbs up on it, because you had
Okay. Yeah, cool. All right, then yeah, thank you very much. Have a great time, and yeah, see you next time, maybe in person at some time in Silicon Valley. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.